Well, I'd love to invite you to open a Bible with me to the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 2. It's in the Old Testament. It goes Joshua, Judges, Ruth, and then 1 Samuel. Feel free to use your table of contents. There's no shame in that. 1 Samuel, chapter 2. We're looking at Hannah's prayer this morning as we're considering this month just some famous prayers in the Old Testament. So I want to read along, if you will, with me, beginning in verse 1. It says, "And Hannah prayed and said, 'My heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, and the feeble bind on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed." Does God care about me? Does God even notice me? Has God forgotten about me? Have you guys ever thought that before? Have you ever said it out loud? Were you brave enough to say it out loud? Have you ever been there? I think these sorts of questions, they're real. I don't think you have to live very long to face these questions. You could be a Christian for a long time, decades and decades long sort of time, and you'll still find yourself with these questions. I would propose to you that it's not a matter of if you'll ever ask that question, it's a matter of when you'll ask that question in your life. Right? And I think this question even gets magnified. Does God care about me? When we feel like we're being faithful to God, if we feel like we're doing the right things, we feel like our heart is really devoted to him, we feel like, man, I really love God, I'm even sacrificing for God. When we're in those places, I think that's when it could be even more magnified, that question, does God care about me? Because I propose to you, if you pay attention to the moments in your life where you feel that way, where you ask that kind of question, it almost always centers around you having an experience where there's something that you think you need, there's something that you feel like you deserve, there's something that you would just say, this is a good thing, but why don't I have it? You know what I mean? Like, God, I don't understand why, if this is good and you're good, why don't I have this thing that is good, right? We can tend to want something so desperately that we think is good and not get it. Have you ever been there? Hannah did. Hannah was there. And in this text today, we just read one of the most famous prayers in the Bible. I don't know if you know that. But it actually comes on the hinge of a chapter 1, that describes her praying. And the prayers she's praying in that chapter are just a little bit different because she is in so much pain. She's in so much anguish. She's asking this question, does God not care? Does God not care? And I think in looking at her prayer this morning, it's really instructive for us when we find ourselves in those places where we're wondering if God cares about us. Because it's really when you're in those types of places where you will want to withdraw from God. If you're ever in that place, wondering that question, you're going to want to pull back. But what I hope you see this morning is that through her prayer, it's actually fuel for us to lean in when we feel that way. Because I want you to see this morning is, it's not a matter of if you'll ever ask that, does God care about me question, it's a matter of when I'll feel that way. I'd say Hannah's prayer is instructive to us because it teaches us that it's not a matter of if you'll see God cares about you, it's a matter of when you'll see that he does. It's when you'll come to the place that you really do see that he does. It's certain that you will see that he cares about you. And so we're going to look at 3 different things in her prayer that teach us to draw near to God. And so when you're wanting to withdraw from God, when you're wondering if he cares about you, you need to train your mind, help other believers in the same way to train our minds to go to God, to draw near to God in prayer. And what will drive you to go to God in prayer is first remembering that God turns weeping into joy. He always turns weeping into joy. This is what we see in verses 1 through 2. What does it say? Hannah prayed and said, "My heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none beside you. There is no rock like our God." So this passage begins with those simple words, and Hannah prayed. And again, I've already mentioned it, but this is not the first time that Hannah prayed. It's important to realize how she got here. Because what happens in chapter 1 is it's describing for you other times that Hannah prayed. If you go back and you just look in chapter 1 of your Bible and kind of skim along with me just for a second, you'll see that Hannah is a woman who's married to a man named Elkanah. And Elkanah, most likely, could not have children with Hannah for one reason or another. And we learn a few verses in that God had closed her womb. And so because of that, most likely he had another wife named Peninnah, who he had sons and daughters with, right? And so just to get it out of the way, people often read passages like this and they go, does the Bible support polygamy? And the answer is clearly no. The Bible teaches over and over again that's not God's design for marriage. And in fact, when you read a narrative, it's just describing what they were doing. It's not saying this is what you should do always, right? And so often what you'll see in any polygamous marriage in the Old Testament, it always goes really badly. It's always filled with brokenness and hurt and sin and resentment. And that's exactly what you see in this story. Because Peninnah could have kids and Hannah could not. And because of that, Peninnah got on her high horse in her arrogance and pride and continually bashed and shamed and ridiculed Hannah. And this was so destructive in Hannah's life. It just was so sad for her to constantly go through this suffering. I mean, I know anybody in this room who's ever gone through infertility, who's ever gone through barrenness, I imagine would say it's maybe one of the most painful things you've ever gone through in your life. And so you, in a way, can relate to Hannah and what she's going through. But even more in Hannah's day, this was even worse. Because for a lot of us, maybe you want to have a child because you've always wanted to be a mom, or you want something within that relationship that's really satisfying to you. And that probably is the case with someone like Hannah. But in the ancient world, it meant far more than that. Because if you did not have kids, that meant your future felt like it was in jeopardy. Because back then, no matter your profession, your wealth, your security in that way was tied to the amount of kids you had. Right? More kids, larger labor force. They didn't have Social Security, they didn't have retirement funds, things like that. And so it was expected that as you got older, your kids were the ones who took care of you. Right? It was a really rough place to be in if you could not have kids. Walter Brueggemann, this should be on the screen for you, he's an Old Testament scholar. He said, barrenness in any ancient text is the effective metaphor of hopelessness. For without children, there was no foreseeable future for yourself, for your family, or for your people. And another layer added to this for someone like Hannah, who's an Israelite, is every single time there would be a male child born, there would always be this question that would percolate in every family. Is this the promised Savior? They were all of their lives were tied up into this understanding that God promised a Savior would come through Adam. He promised someone would come from Abraham. And all of Israel saw themselves as children of Abraham, as children of Adam. And so every single child that would ever be born, you would feel like maybe my child will be a part of the saving purposes of God in this world. And so to not be able to have children meant that you were excluded in your own mind from the purposes of God in the world. There was so much pain and shame that Hannah is going through here. And so it's no wonder then if you look at verse 7 of chapter 1, we see her weeping and not eating. I mean, have you been so brokenhearted that you weren't even hungry? I mean, I'm always hungry, right? But there could be places you get to in life where you're like, I am not even hungry anymore. She was in that place. And so what did she do with her broken heart? What do you do with your broken heart? Did she just blame Penina? Did she bottle it up? No, she took her broken heart and she drew near to God. That's what she did. She drew near to God. And what does it say? She poured out her heart, is the language of chapter 1. She just poured it out. Poured it out right outside the temple. She's weeping and talking to God and giving God her anxieties and her fears and her unmet wants. Saying, God, if you would give me a child, I will give him back to you. I'll make him a Levite, which a Levite could be from any of the tribes. It just meant that you couldn't ever cut your hair and you couldn't drink strong drink and you would serve in the temple all the days of your life. So she's saying, if you give me a son, he'll serve you. He'll serve you. She's pouring her heart out to God, and the priest Eli sees her and she's weeping and her mouth is moving and she's not saying anything though, and so he concludes that she's drunk. And she goes, I'm not drunk. I'm just pouring out my soul to God. And so Eli says, well, may God grant your request. And do you know what happened? He did. God opened her womb. And she became pregnant, and she bore a son named Samuel. And do you want to know what she did? She gave him to the Lord. She followed through. She didn't do a bait and switch. I didn't really mean it. No. She gave him to the Lord. So do you know what that meant? There was a change that happened in her heart before Samuel was ever born. Something changed in her. Because what would it mean to have a son but give him away? It would mean I don't get that economic support. I don't get him to care for me later in life. I don't get the extra force, labor force to support us financially in the here and now. I don't even get to strut him around on my hip and have him walk next to me when he gets older. And so here's my son, his name is Samuel. I want you to meet him. She didn't get to do that because he would always be off in the temple. Right? She didn't get to while all the other women had their sons. She gave that up, which meant she really did have a changed heart. Her weeping was turned into joy. Do you see that in verse 1? Because what does it say? My heart exults in the Lord. That's not a word we often use. That word literally just means feels joy. My heart feels joy in the Lord, is what she prays. Why does she feel joy in the Lord? Why is she so worked up? Because it says, God is my salvation. I've rejoiced in his salvation. That's why I feel all this joy, which is not just some religious jargon. She really is proclaiming, God saved me, which kind of feels a little exaggerated, doesn't it? I mean, has anybody in this room ever had a child and you said, God saved me? I mean, I don't know, maybe you went through it and you're like, wow, I thought I was going to die. I have no idea, right? The anguish of childbirth. But most women don't have a baby and say, God saved me. That's not what they say. So what is Hannah doing here? Hannah's actually looking back on the story of her people. And she is saying, what I am going through right now, in my suffering, in my barrenness, relying on God to perform a miracle, is exactly what God's people have always had to do. When God's people were enslaved in Egypt, they cried out to God, God, do you not see? God, do you not care? God, do you not see how we are suffering? And God heard and God did something about it. And he demonstrated his care for them by leading them out of their slavery. And here Hannah's picking up on that and saying, that's exactly my life story. That's what I'm going through as a representative of my people. And so in the same way, it means that you don't have to go through barrenness to resonate with what Hannah's saying this morning. You can, but you don't have to. You, in the same way, can go through different things in your life where you feel similarly, God, do you even care about me? And you could be in the place where Hannah sees her weeping turn into feeling joy. And so she proclaims, there is none holy. Do you see this? None holy, none besides, no rock. No one can compare to you, God. Right, so just take those two ideas, you guys, and put them together now. She feels joy in the Lord. And who is the Lord? He is an incomparable rock. Which means what? He is so dependable. He's unfailing. Do you see how she's pairing these ideas together? I feel joy in the Lord, and he is so faithful. He's so consistent. So what does that mean for me and you? It means that when you draw near to God, this is just what he does. When you want to pull back, draw near to him because he is a faithful rock. He turns weeping into joy. This is what he does. You can count on him to be this in your life. Enjoying God is the eventual experience of anyone who draws near to God in prayer. I'm telling you, it's the characteristic of a God who is filled with joy himself. It's a characteristic of God, and it's contagious to anybody who gets around God, quite honestly. Just like this summer, many of you will probably be sitting by a pool or floating in a pool. I know one of my favorite things to do is floating in a pool and reading a book, right? And every summer it happens, I'll have kids in the pool with me, and they'll splash and get water on my book, and I'm always like, why are you getting water on my book, you know? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm in a pool, right? I mean, I don't know why every year this is surprising to me, right? If I didn't want my book to get wet, I should not read in a pool, right? Right, in the same way, if you draw near to God, you should expect to experience joy. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Yes, our weeping is real in life, but the feeling of joy is also very real, you guys. So draw near to God in prayer, remembering that he turns weeping into joy. But secondly, what should fuel you to draw near to God in prayer is to train your mind and help other believers remember that we draw near remembering that God works in ways that we just don't expect. He will work in ways that you do not expect, that are surprising to you. This is what we see in verses 3 through 8, do we not? She says, talk no more so very proudly, let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. This is sort of like a heading verse here for verses 3 through 8. And you might imagine that Hannah's maybe thinking of Peninnah, this arrogant person who's belittling her and holding over her head how she can't have kids and she can, right? And so she's saying, talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. Why? Because God knows what we are really like. Like he knows the real you, not the you that you project, which should give us a little bit of pause when we read this, right? Who are the arrogant? Who are the proud? Anybody who's going through a time where we go, God, do you not care? That doesn't mean that we are excluded from actually being still in that category of the arrogant and the proud. Right? Because there is a hard side of pride, which is the obvious side of pride. It's the person who just is like me, right? They're always talking about themselves. right? They're always telling you all the great things they've done and who they are, and you're like, man, that person's so arrogant. Right? They're always talking down on other people. It's the Peninnahs of the world. But there's the soft side of pride too that's constantly walking around saying, life is still about me, so what do you think about me? Right? And those people can appear humble, they can appear insecure, all these various forms, but it's still pride, it's still arrogance, it's still a focus on the self. And so do you see what's happening here? She is saying God weighs our actions. He knows the real you, not the you that you're trying to project. He knows the real you, and actions are weighed. And that's really important to keep in mind when you see what the rest of the verses are laying out for you. Because what do you see in verses 4 through 8? God works in surprising ways. He works in ways that we don't expect. And verses 4 through 8 are just showing you how God often just turns the world upside down on its head. Do you see it? In verse 4 through 8, we have all of these sort of catalogs or series of things that she unpacks. We have the mighty who have their bows broken. We have the full who are walking around saying, actually, can I do a little side job for you? Because I could really use some money so I could buy a piece of bread. Right? The people who were so full from feasting on life, they're hiring themselves out to eat. The bows of the mighty are broken. I mean, we could think of just a few chapters in Samuel. You're going to encounter someone like Goliath, who everyone's terrified of, and yet God's going to have a little teenage boy walk out, and no one's going to think he's going to do anything to this crazy, scary person, and yet just through a few stones, God is going to bring him down. But no one would expect that. Right? The people who have many children, what does it say? They are forlorn, which I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever used that word in my life, right? So looking it up, it just means they're infertile. Right? You used to have all these kids, and now you're unable to do that. You're dry, you're withered up, is the idea. These reversals continue. The Lord kills and brings to life. The Lord brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. God works in ways we don't expect. And so the opposite side of that reality is equally as true. There are people on top today that are going to be on the bottom someday. And there are a lot of people who are on the bottom today that are going to be on the top someday. I mean, do you see even the picture of verse 8? He's raising up the poor from the dust and the needy from the ash heap. That would have been a vivid picture in their mind because it was the ash heap that was outside the city where they would go and burn the garbage. It's the dump, basically, right? The dump maybe you go to. We don't see this nowadays, but back then you would see the needy and the poor just scavenger. I don't know why I can't remember this word today. Being a scavenger, right? And just kind of getting little things that they can collect and eat and provide for themselves from the dust, from the burning of the garbage. That's the picture. And it's saying he will lift up people in that position and cause them to sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. Inherit a seat of honor. God is working in ways in this world, you guys, that you do not expect. And when you're going through a time where you wonder if God cares about you, that is so important to remember. It is so important to remember because we get in these places where we're like, there's no way things will ever change. There's no way things will ever change. We can't fathom anything different down the line. I mean, it's kind of a sideways illustration, but just think if you were living in 1908 and someone walked up to you and they said, hey, I've seen this thing, it's called an iPhone. I'm traveling from the future. Do you want it, right? I'll give it to you, or whatever. You would just think, this is crazy. Like, doesn't even sound interesting. I don't want one, right? But nowadays, like over 100 years later, you live in a time where you're like, I can't even imagine life without my smartphone, right? I mean, does anybody want to go back to printing out MapQuest directions and just having stacks of folders in your car about where to go and how to get there? Or, your Rand McNally map thing, right? Does anybody want to go back to that? Probably not. But not that long ago, we couldn't foresee this even being a reality, right? When I watched Back to the Future 2 as a kid, and some boss is telecommunicating with someone and firing them over fax, I was like, that's never going to be possible, right? And we FaceTime all the time, don't we? Right? This is just like a normal part of life. I mean, I've kind of used this example before in some ways, but it's fairly relevant to my life. It was actually 2 years ago to the day that I went on my first run. And I was like, I think I'm going to try to pick up running, right? And that day, I was like, I hate this so much. Little did I know that 2 years later, and I'm truly not bragging, it's for the illustration, I could not imagine running 700 miles a year, which was what I'll probably do this year. I went on a walk with my wife and my in-laws the other day, and we were walking down Highland, and I saw all these people running, and I felt joy inside of me. I exulted, right, is the idea. And I did, and I was like, I want to go running so badly right now. And I remember thinking, like, who am I? Right? This is not who I was. But I could never have thought that I would ever be in a place like that. Right? God does things in our lives that we just don't expect. But when we can't see it, it feels impossible to us, doesn't it? And so there are so many permanent things in your life right now that eventually will be reversed in this world. And yeah, that sounds enticing to us. We love a good reversal of fortune story, don't we? We love the parable that Jesus tells of the rich man and Lazarus, the beggar being put in heaven and the rich man being in hell. And we go, wow, that is crazy to see that reversal of fortune. We love the story Cinderella, classic story, the Count of Monte Cristo, all these reversal of fortune stories. And I think we like them at some level because deep down we're wondering, is that going to be my experience? Is that going to be my experience? You don't watch Cinderella and think you're the evil stepmother. You're like, I'm Cinderella, right? But what if you're the evil stepmother, right? What if you're the arrogant? I don't know. There are things in this world that God eventually will be plain to all that He is doing and He is working, right? Right, there are a lot of people on top today that are going to be on bottom someday. Right, there are people that everyone wants to be like today that someday no one will want to trade places with them. Right, and the opposite is also true. You might feel like no one will want to trade places with you today, but remember that our story is tied up in the story that when Jesus was hanging on a cross, no one was sitting there being like, I wish I were Him. No one was thinking that. But then He rose from the death, and now He is seated on the throne, ruling the universe. And so this morning, I want to ask you, are you feeling a little feeble? Like, are you feeling a little hungry? Do you feel barren? Do you feel poor? Do you feel low? Do you feel needy? Do you not feel like you're on top today? Draw near to God because He works in surprising ways. Maybe He really does care about you. Maybe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I know it's hard to believe. I know it's hard to believe. But someday we'll all see. And so third, draw near to God in prayer, remembering not just that He turns weeping into joy and not that He just works in unexpected and surprising ways that are hard for us to fathom, but draw near to God in prayer when you feel like He doesn't care, remembering that He will have the last word. He will have the last word. And this is all that we see in verses 9 through 10. He will guard the feet of His faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them He will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to His king and exalt the horn, which is a picture of strength, exalt the horn of His anointed. Hannah's remembering that one day we will all stand before God in judgment on the last day. And the winners will not be the strong, the powerful, the wealthy, the popular, the successful in the eyes of the world. The winners will be the faithful. It's the faithful ones, isn't that what it says? And the faithful are here contrasted with the adversaries of the Lord. It's the people who were the arrogant, who said, I don't need God. They stood in opposition to God. And so, what we see here is God coming and conquering in judgment one day and having the last word. And I don't think it's any mistake that if you read chapter 1 of 1 Samuel, you will see for the very first time in the Bible, Hannah and the author of Samuel call God by a name that hadn't been called of him before. Do you want to know what that name is? The Lord of hosts. First time in the Bible that name comes up, 1 Samuel chapter 1. He is the Lord of hosts. Meaning what? He's the Lord of an untold or innumerable size army. An angelic army is the idea. It's a military idea. That God is a king and he's coming with his army, and there is no one that will stand in his way of accomplishing what he has set out to accomplish. He's Lord of hosts. It's in the name. This actually made me think this last week or two, my son, he went over to Panera Bread, and he ordered like a drink and something to eat, and I always get the emails of what he orders, and I don't know why, it's fun to check, but I saw he got like a Dr. Pepper and a loaf of bread. And he got home and I was like, dude, Dr. Pepper makes sense, right? Loaf of bread, you just ate a loaf of bread? He was like, yeah, it's good, right? I've never once gone to Panera Bread and thought to order a loaf of bread. He literally said, what else would you order? I was like everything else, not a loaf of bread. He's like, well, it's good. And then he said, he's like, it's called Panera Bread, Dad. And I was like, you're right? It's literally in the name. I've never gone to Panera Bread and thought to order bread, right? It just comes with it, on the side, right? But it's literally in the name, right? God's name, one of his names, literally is Lord of armies. Don't you kind of expect him to be a certain way in light of that? I mean, it's in the name. And it being in the name means that he will have the last word. There's no one who will stand over him in defeat, right? In conquering him. He is the Lord of armies. It's in the name. So, how will he have the last word? How will he conquer? My goodness, you guys. It's not what we would expect, is it? Because notice what she says here. She says, the Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He is the Lord of armies. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. I don't know if you realize it yet, but Israel did not have a king when Hannah said that. They never had a king at this point. It wouldn't come until a little bit later. So somehow, influenced under the sway and inspiration of the Holy Spirit, she prays a prayer and talks about God's king, even though they didn't have category for that. Do you see what he's called? He will exalt the horn of his anointed. Anointed in Hebrew is Messiah. Anointed in Greek is Christ. Do you see what she's doing? God will come. He will have the last word. And what will his last word be? His last word will be through the conquering of his son. She's turning our eyes to the future. And what is she turning your eyes to see? Hannah's turning your eyes to see how God will ultimately care for you. How he will, without a shadow of a doubt, definitively show that he cares. How is he going to do it? Well, he's going to raise up life from the ash heap is what he's going to do. Because the king who would come, who is the anointed one, he would actually go outside the city, be led outside of the city to literally the trash heap. And it would be there that he would be crucified. It would there that he would be crucified. And this would not make sense to God's people. It would not be what they thought would be the way that God showed that he cared about them. Because most people would look at what they thought the Messiah would be and they would picture like Joshua bringing Jericho down. They would picture people like Gideon and his few hundred men, right? They would picture like the Moseses, right? The Samsons, people like that. That's what our king is going to be like. And all of these people would forget the mothers of the Bible. They forgot about old barren Sarah and how God worked through her and not beautiful, fertile Hagar to bring about the promised messianic seed Isaac. I don't know if they had in view that it would be through Leah, the girl that nobody wanted, not beautiful Rachel that Jacob wanted, that God would use to bring the messianic saving seed of Judah. Samson would be a man born to a barren woman who wasn't able to have children. Samuel here is born of a suffering woman in the anguish of her barrenness, and God opens her womb to bring about a prophet who would direct God's people. And ultimately, God would come to a virgin, and he would say, "This child in your womb is from the Holy Spirit." The most miraculous birth this world had ever seen. And Mary, she will pray, and she will borrow and steal all these words from Hannah. And she will say, yeah, God works in ways we never expected. But oh man, do we know that he cares for us? Because now we know and we wonder, does God really care for us? We can look at the cross and we can remember that he cares more deeply than we could have ever hoped or dreamed. It's almost embarrassing how much he cares for us, isn't it? If you think about it. I mean, we hate putting people out, don't we? Don't you hate putting someone out? Don't you hate feeling like you're bothering somebody? I mean, I'm that guy who's always like, yeah, I'd love for you to help, but not if you're too busy, or, if you really feel like it, you can, but don't worry about it. No worries if not. Like, I'm that guy, I don't want to put anybody out, right? Are you like me in any way? Do you just love relying on people being like, yeah, please come and do this for me, right? Nobody often feels that way, but we did more than put God out, if I could put it that way. We did more than bother him because he came and died. I mean, may we never doubt that he cares about us because he did that one thing. And so the question is not if we will know he cares about us. The question is just when. It's when. Right? Just like if you go into Costco hungry, it's not a matter of if you're going to buy something you shouldn't buy, it's when you're going to buy something you shouldn't buy. Right? When you're pregnant, no one asks if you're due, they ask when you're due. Right? When you plant seeds in the ground, no farmer is going, man, if something comes up. No, it's when the harvest comes, because we know that we will reap what we sow. Right? Nobody sits up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. wondering, I don't know if the sun will come up. No, we go, when will it come up? Right? My kids right now, it's towards the end of the school year, and they're not wondering if it'll come. It's when will the summer come? Right? There are so many not just ifs, but whens in life. And when you look at the cross, you know. And when you look at Hannah's prayer, you can know that you can draw near to God when you wonder if he cares about you, because you know. You know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Guys, draw near when you wonder if God cares, because God turns our weeping into joy through Jesus. He turns the world upside down through Jesus. And he has the final word through Jesus.